What's in the box? David Fincher directing the World War Z sequel, that's what. I'm Sasha Pearl-Raver, and this is Screen Junkies News. Looks like Brad Pitt and David Fincher are teaming up once again. No, not for that Benjamin Button sequel you've all been dying for, but for the World War Z follow-up. According to Variety, Brad Pitt has been talking to Mr. Fincher for some time to bring him onto the project, and apparently it worked, because the director is now in talks to do just that. Here to tell us if the director of Seven and Fight Club is a good idea are Andy Signore, Roth Cornett, and Emma Fife. Hi, guys.
Hey.
When is Fincher ever not a good idea?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Alien 3.
Well, one misstep in otherwise.
Circumstances, Andy.
I mean, Fight Club, Seven. This is a good thing.
I might say Benjamin Button. I didn't love Benjamin Button.
I liked Benjamin Button. Okay.
What's your favorite Fincher movie?
Seven.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Everybody's Seven?
100%.
No, I'm
100%
Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Fight Club.
100%
Me and you,
Fight
girl.
Club. The best.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yes.
Although
I don't think it holds up as well.
No,
you're so wrong. You're wrong, Andy.
Seven
We're telling
still
Let's
holds up.
change the subject
so
before we all
watching.
get fired. Okay, so David Fincher taking over. This was a film that was Mark Forrester's baby. There have been a lot of reports about what happened on set. People have complained a lot about the third act of World War Z, and the reports are that Mark Forrester didn't even do that. He turned in such a bad cut that the studio took it away from him, and basically Damon Lindelof, the first AD, and the DP shot that third act, which personally,
Well, I heard they shot a whole war scene in Russia against the winter zombies that apparently that they just cut.
It just got killed. Totally.
And apparently the wife was like, Matthew Fox was the villain, and apparently tried to rape the wife. Like apparently it got really dark.
Oh, geez.
There was a
and
whole
weird,
other thing.
like a whole different movie. That I was like, I actually really like what they did instead of that dark sounding thing.
Although when I saw Matthew Fox show up on the rooftop in the helicopter, I was like, why are you not in this movie more?
Apparently
and then
they shot a bunch.
Yeah. But now you've got David Fincher. David Fincher, who will have nothing taken away from him. The man even chooses how they market his films. So what do you think this means for a follow-up?
Well, first of all, Brad Pitt and David Fincher obviously have a relationship, and I'm sure that Brad, because I know him, he was pushing really hard for this, is what I would guess, because he wanted World War Z, the first one, to be great. And I think he loved the book. Now, the film, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is very, 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 very different from that. Yes. So when you first hear David Fincher plus World War Z, you're like, I'm so confused because I don't see him doing speeding zombies, and I don't think he will. I think this is going to be a very different film than the first one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And Roth, as you bring up, it was very different from the book. The original film was so much so that like all it shared was a title, basically. And I don't hate the film World War Z. It just is not really the book. You know, World War Z is very much this intense zombie thriller, very emotional journey of this family. And the book is like a New York Times article that is a factual account of what happened during the zombie apocalypse after it's been mostly contained.
Sure.
So I think that Fincher is gonna do something that's a little closer to that. We know he's good at handling like very multifaceted stories. I mean, you look at something like Fight Club or like Seven, there's all these different components that are going on at once that all culminate in this big revelation. So I think that it's definitely gonna be a different flavor of film.
Sure. I mean, you guys just released the Honest trailer for The Social Network, and one of the things that I thought was so funny but also so true is the way he makes really mundane stuff seem incredibly intense.
Yeah, exactly.
And before we started filming, I was saying, you know, it makes sense to me that they wouldn't follow the path of the book, because telling a story about a zombie apocalypse that's been contained is not as interesting as a zombie apocalypse that's breaking out. But Andy, what would you like to see them do for the sequel?
Well, I would like to see more like the book. Like the book is told like more of a documentary of the look back and the experts, and they're telling. And the audio book is what the portions I listen to are really exciting. It has like Nathan Fillion, a bunch of really awesome actors.
Yeah, Mark Hamill.
Exactly. Read out the book. So that's another fun way to do it. But yeah, I kind of want to see that version. There's a lot they didn't, because when we did the Honest trailer for that one too, I did a lot more research on the book back then, and it just sounded so much more interesting. That said, I actually did like the movie, strangely enough. Like I thought it was entertaining, and I thought the third act, the way they kept it more contained and did that, even though it had Pepsi at the end, which is not an in thing now. He literally stops thing and then drinks a
refreshing.
Cracks the code. It's like the
But it's such
brilliant
a great
product
moment.
placement.
That walk is such a great
Oh,
moment.
it's beautiful.
So tense.
But that whole moment of what I thought was really a smart way to sort of contain it and give us an out. So yeah, I hope they would do something similar and not go too big with it. Like, how do we, now that they've contained this in a way, how do we go back and learn about the other stories that happened or whatnot to see where we go?
Presumptively, to your earlier point, like this could be the story. This could actually follow what we saw in the first film, because this could be the story of Brad Pitt now going back and taking the first person accounts of what happened during the zombie apocalypse. And you brought up The Social Network, which I think is the most perfect film to compare what this would be to. Right? Because because if you look at The Social Network, it could be like lawyers talking about stuff. You know what I mean? Like, who has the rights to Facebook? Could be the subtitle of that movie. And still, it's so exciting. It's
really
so
well done.
tense.
And
Really well done.
rewatching it,
dramatic.
it does hold up. It's still dramatic.
The relationships really count. And so I think you're going to see the same thing here.
Everything plays out.
You know how it plays out. There are no surprises.
And I think that Social Network is a great comparison. I want this to be the Social Network of the zombie apocalypse. And again, like,
just don't get poked.
And the thing is because Brad Pitt does have such a great relationship with David Fincher, like, I don't want to see Brad Pitt not get a chance to make the movie that he wanted to make. So I think, painting him as that narrator who's going around and like investigating kind of how this all came about, that to me is a great film.
So that is the question. So at the end of World War Z, if you haven't seen it recently, Brad Pitt plays a character named Jerry Lane, and he basically cracks the code that if you inject yourself with a small amount of a deadly pathogen, you can move through the zombie world without being infected, because they think that they shouldn't bite you. They don't want to get infected themselves.
It's like when they wipe the guts on themselves.
Right.
Yes.
So the question becomes, will this movie pick up where it left off, and now are the zombies sort of evolving? Have they figured out a way around that pathogen? Or does it go back in time, and is this really the movie that the first movie should have been?
No, I don't think it goes back in time. I think that this becomes the movie about what happens after. How does the world survive after, when they're picking up the pieces of the zombie apocalypse and trying to trace what happened and trying to see how to best move forward and build. This is a guy too that is the master at building tension, right? So there could still be a lurking threat. Maybe they don't have all of them. Maybe one thing that we didn't get to see is water zombies, which
and in the book they make it very clear that the zombies can survive underwater, and honestly the majority of them are actually at the bottom of the ocean.
At bottom of the ocean. So the question becomes like, how do you clean up that mess?
But I do think there's also a way to do the movie interesting. There's a show my wife's got me into called Captive on Netflix, where they basically find a country that people were held hostage in, and they talk to them, real people, and then they reenact the moments done cinematically. Whoa. So it's like, it's intense, but it looks really fantastic, and it feels like you're watching everything they're talking about. You're seeing it. So I could see a little bit of that, of looking back, of as he's talking to these people, you could sort of borrow that sort of style of storytelling, which is actually really interesting and cool, because most reenactments are cheap and crappy. Like, if you actually did cinematic reenactments while they're telling the story of the apocalypse of what happened, I would be on board for that too. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that anytime you get Fincher and Brad Pitt back together, though, I'm certainly more excited for that. And I think that tonally, this will be a really interesting movie. I don't know how akin it will be to the first one. Like, if the first one was an action geopolitical thriller, what do you think the second one will be?
Rebuilding.
I think it's and it becomes
more of like a personal.
Still going to have some political themes of who's in charge.
Because the governments will have fallen apart. Right, the world's in chaos. It's
Walking Dead has been doing it for 8 years now.
Let's add in the first season, and he directed the first episodes of House of Cards. So, like, if you're thinking about adding in that layer of it being a political drama with elements of a thriller, because they're probably still out there and lurking. And like Andy said, you're going to flash back to some of the horror people were experiencing. Like, you should be horrified by this happening to your world. It should feel like a living nightmare.
And certainly there is room to have a little bit of political drama in there, because in the book there is a lot of sort of explanation of what happened to all the various different nations and how they kind of redefined their borders, and like China's a democracy now after they had this big civil war. So I think that can all be incorporated as well. And it would be interesting if that's sort of like physically happening as Brad Pitt's character is going around to all the various countries, kind of getting an account of how this came to be. So I think there's definitely room for a lot of intrigue and tension there as well.
Absolutely. I personally liked World War Z as well, but this one seems like the World War Z we've all been waiting for, and we want to know what you think. Does this pairing make you excited? What sort of plot would you want to see in the Fincher, now Brad Pitt, re-team up? Number 4 go around? Good for them. Let us know in the comments below. You can tweet us at SJ News. Make sure to like and subscribe. Of course, you can always click here for more Screen Junkies news. We'll see you soon.